Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wrestling of Statistics, the only show that looks at the world of professional wrestling through the unique lens of stats, analytics, and everything in between. I am your host, as always, Ryan Neitzey, and with me, as always, my co-host, my friend from another country. I got nothing on that one. I'm falling apart on my nickname game, but the host behind Pro Wrestling Musings himself, Craig Leask. Craig, how are you doing, my friend?
Much better after hearing your full introduction. I don't know if the listeners are going to be treated to the whole thing, or if it's just going to be cut to include the kind of professional sounding end bit. But there were some swear words. There were the names of other shows that Ryan does, and Take 3, I believe that was.
I feel like, sadly, you know, this is what, episode 17, I think we've done?
Something like that, yeah.
And you would think at this point I would have had, you know, I would have it down. You would think I would have the intro down at this point. But I feel like in the past several weeks, I've been getting the actual intro on like take 3 or 4. And I don't know what's happening. I don't know if it's the stress is getting to me. I don't know if it's you know, I'm putting stress on myself. I want to put up a good front for you. I don't know what it is, but I'm falling apart at the seams, it appears.
Yeah, I think Take 3 is kind of the norm, to be honest with you.
Take 3 will be like the name of like my production company, I think. Where it's like, you know, you don't get on take 1 or 2, but take 3, that's the beauty. Take 3 is right there. Well, how are you doing, Craig? How's been another week in the life of Craig Leask? How you're still enjoying your 7 COVID case numbers a week, another week of school in the books. These are the life updates that I know about you. How are you doing?
I was just waiting to find out what else is going on in my life.
Let me mansplain how your life has been. So,
yeah, it's fine. Yeah, back at work isn't terrible. Quite like my job. Kind of appreciate it more after not doing it for 6 months. It's interesting. Yeah, not too bad. Watched some football last night. It was okay. Bayern Munich are the champions of Europe, if you care. Yeah, that's about it.
Wow, the champions of Europe. How? I feel like I need to start watching soccer. Like, and I legit, I've been thinking about it for a little bit now. My girlfriend is also, she used to play soccer and loves soccer, but I feel like, you know, and the Atlanta United team won the MLS Cup, I think like 2 years ago. So I live in an area that appreciates soccer as well. I feel like I need to start getting more into soccer.
Yeah, possibly. I think America is one of a handful of countries, isn't it, that doesn't have it as their first sport. I'm not sure where else. You in Australia, perhaps.
Probably.
But yeah, it's strange that kind of the most sportingly capable country in the world, because of, I don't know, money and population, when you look at the Olympics, doesn't bother so much with the world's main sport.
When, you know what I should do? I should just look up the Premier League and pick a team, and that will be my team to get me going into the soccer universe, I guess you could say. Now, what team could I pick that will not upset Craig the most? Let's see. I love the logo of the Hotspurs. Just a bird on top of a ball.
Very low effort.
That's all it is. What though?
I mean, if you want a good logo, you have to go with Everton, and they've got the very, you know, quite often sports teams go with like things that inspire kind of strength or confidence or whatever. Yeah, when you look at Everton's badge, they've just got like a tower. It's very odd.
Yes, they're fortified, and then it has like, and they have a shield logo, which I enjoy. I assume this Wikipedia thing where I clicked on Premier League and then teams is up to date.
I would assume so.
I do like the Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Yeah, that's a good name.
It's a,
Generally just called Wolves. They're quite exciting actually for they're they only got into the league a couple of years ago and they're like 7th this season. They're all right.
and I'm also enjoying the logo behind Watford.
Watford. What's is yellow and black with a red bee on it or something? Is that correct?
Yellow and black with a red moose on it.
Moose. All right. Okay. I don't know what the moose is about because they're called the Hornets. So
Wait,
yeah,
hold
who knows?
on. Wait, they're called the Hornets and they have a moose?
Yeah.
What
I
is
think it's because of the yellow and black.
What a terrible. Who designed this? Oh, Hull City. Hull City. Look at that. Look at that. Gosh dang Jaguar.
It's a tiger.
That's a tiger? Okay, well then I'm
Yeah,
not
but
rooting for
they're not in the Premier League.
Oh, well then this list is not up to date.
They've not been in the Premier League for 2 or 3 years.
Who's your team? Who's your team, Craig?
And well, I support Liverpool, and I always have. So it's not just because they won the league. So I don't. It's kind of a bad look to kind of choose your football team and then go for the ones that have just won the league. I feel.
Oh well, no, I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna piggyback. As you can tell, I've already started deciding based purely on logos alone. And if I had to pick a team that I really wanted to support that was part of Premier League based on logo alone, I think I'm gonna go with the Wolves. I think I'm gonna go with the Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Yeah, Wolves are good. They're the best players from Mexico. That's near you.
This is true.
They've Raul Jimenez is their best player, and then they've got this other guy called Adama Traore, who's fun to play with on FIFA because he runs really fast.
Oh, that's always good. That's always good. Well, maybe I'm gonna start being a Wolves guy, a Wolvesman, if you will.
A Wolvesman.
A Wolvesman. Is that how there's?
Oh, who knows?
I know I used to play soccer, but I feel like I just don't know anything about the culture of soccer/football, in general.
Yeah. I don't know about like culture. It's quite tempestuous. I suppose it's there's a lot of aggro surrounding it. A lot of cities have more than one team, and when people are looking for anything to attach tribalism to, football tends to be the one that gets it. So, America, I don't know if you get this as much because each city seems to have a team, and I don't know if the hostility is as bad. I don't associate American football with having a particular amount of hostility around it.
No, I would say that college sports have a little bit of that tribalism. I mean, granted, most college sports also come from like a place of like, usually starts from like, oh, I went to this school and I like their team. But college sports has a lot more of that sort of rivalry between teams because, the team is always the same. When you go to like professional leagues like NBA basketball, NFL football, it's less about the teams, but I would argue more about the players on the team. You're sort of rooting from player to player. And that's kind of the reason why I like college ball a lot more, is because I like supporting the team. So maybe European football is the way to go for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly about teams. I mean, I would often, if like a player left my team, then I'd probably still follow them depending on how much I like them or how they left. Like, so for example, when I was growing up, Michael Owen was one of the players that was good for Liverpool at that time. So I kind of always liked him when he was he went to Newcastle for a bit, and I always followed his career. Where he went after that, I wasn't such a big fan of, as he went to Manchester United. And throughout my whole childhood, Manchester United were the team that kind of won everything. And they get a lot of plaudits, and Ferguson's like the best football manager ever. But I would suggest to you that over the over like Manchester United's stranglehold over English football, they were never actually really that interesting to watch, or they were never really like an A-plus football team, and they never hit the heights of like a Barcelona or even a Manchester City, or I would suggest Liverpool in the last 2 years. But yeah, no, it's more about teams, but like it does lead to the kind of just try Googling images of Celtic Rangers in Glasgow, or if you want something even more illustrative of like how tribal football gets, have a look at Turkish or Greek, Turkish Galatasaray versus whoever their rivals are is always kind of terrifying. And if you want to be proper scared, have a look at South American football rivalries. Those are like deadly.
I feel like Rob said something about how like they used to like throw things on the field. It was like some other, I don't know, I don't remember. Go back and listen to that episode, I guess.
It was the Luis Figo Luis Figo went to Real Madrid from Barcelona, and somebody threw a pig's head onto the field.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what?
In lighter news, a couple seasons ago, somebody threw a cabbage at Steve Bruce.
This is what's wrong with PC culture. No one wants to throw pigs' heads on the pitch anymore. They're just throwing cabbage. That's all it is. They don't want to go and really upset people. They just want to upset vegetarians, I guess. Oh, man. Okay, well, we're not even a football podcast here. What we talk about here is wrestling, and what we talk about in regards to wrestling is we basically kind of review wrestling matches, but not just any sort of normal review thing. We got to throw our spin on it, throw our spin on the ball, and what we do is we take a look at the wrestling matches that we enjoyed in the past week, or sort of big moments of the past week, and we'll talk about it through these stats analytics, because as sort of Craig creates or figures out the stats for everything, or what's the word? I don't know.
I tend to say collates.
Collates that's probably the word I'm trying to think of. As Craig collates the stats together, stories appear from all these stats, not just the stories that are told in the ring, but more specifically what these stats tell. And we're here today to discuss. We have a decent amount of stuff to get to, so let's get right into it. Real quickly, we wanted to talk about this. We kind of alluded to it last week, but we wanted to open up a little bit with Cody versus Mr. Brodie Lee of the Dark Order for that TNT title match. Last week, we talked about how this potentially could be a title change, like it in fact was. But boy, howdy, was this a quick match, Craig? Was it 3 minutes and 9 seconds for Brodie Lee to get the win over Cody? And we got some news about the whole Cody angle as well, I guess. But let's talk about the match first. Not much, I would say, maybe to talk about, but what are your takeaways here, Craig?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I can remember looking at the clock, be like, there's only like 10 minutes left here. They're going to go to a draw so that they can do this again all out or something like that. In fact, no. Brodie was just going to crush Cody in 3 minutes and 9 seconds. Cody with 12 strikes there on the graphic. He got those 12 strikes straight away. He rushed into Brodie Lee, attacked him, hit him about 12 times before Brodie fought back, kind of pushing him off, and then he just took control and destroyed and dismantled Cody Rhodes, who has been on a winning streak. He is the kind of the most accumulative wrestler for kind of in-ring in 2020 for 1v1 matches quite considerably, and he was just taken apart here in 3 minutes. So much so quickly so that there was time for the Dark Order to take out Arn Anderson and the Nightmare Family and Cody's partner, Brandy Rhodes. So it was quite something to behold. And I would suggest that the statistics here and the way that the match panned out, if you look at the rather shortened version of the flow of offense as usual, there's the rush from Cody, and then Brodie Lee's sweeping offense. Cody There was one point in the match where he managed to reverse a move from Brodie Lee, and Brodie Lee immediately reversed it back into his favor without Cody getting in any offense and just won the match. And I would suggest what's interesting here is as Cody has kind of perhaps descended into the Prince of Pro Wrestling persona, or whatever that was about, I would have suggested before that he was very measured in his matches. He had a plan. He'd go for submission holds. He didn't always get in a lot of offense, but it was measured. Whereas here, he rushed at the beginning and got dismantled by an opponent that he perhaps wasn't prepared for.
Yeah,
maybe he's got something else on his mind. Who knows what he's doing in coming weeks?
Oh man, if only we had news to break. My take on this match was like it felt like I was watching a match on Dark. You know, like that sort of idea of, you know, take the maybe not the greatest example, but like take any sort of like match on Dark where we have the quote unquote jobber who is, it's not really jobber. It's just kind of like low card people because they're not like jobbing out people. But, you know, let's take like Sean Dean or something, or I don't know, Ryan Pyle, or no, my favorite, Fabu Andre. You know, we're taking Fabu Andre. Fabu Andre's facing Jon Moxley. He's trying to get the win quickly as possible because a win over the AEW World Champion Jon Moxley would be a huge moment in Fabu Andre's career. So he's coming out swinging first, but then after a little bit, he just gets overrun. He gasses out and he just gets utterly destroyed. This is kind of what happened here. Cody went for it at the very beginning, and then just, as you can see in the flow of offense, he had his moment. Mr. Brodie Lee not only got it back, but overpowered Cody with his own level of offense, and was just able to just utterly dismantle and destroy the crown over the Prince of Pro Wrestling and take that crown for himself. I mean, when you look at this, it's not really about anything else. It's just about Cody was, I don't know what's different. Is it the fact that I would have to look at the past Cody like flow of offense to stuff to see if he, you know, what's kind of changed, what's kind of different about this match. Did he go for it at the very beginning as opposed to sort of waiting and biding his time? Like what is different about, maybe it's just Brodie Lee versus everybody else. I mean, this was Cody's 9th TNT title match, which I think was out of 10 weeks, I believe, 10 or 11 weeks.
Yeah, so I think as you'd suggested, we're going to look at this title reign in detail at some point because there's so much material there. There's been like a Cody match every week. When you just very quickly though, seeing, as you mentioned it, when he fought against Scorpio Sky, Scorpio Sky was the one that came out hot. Cody built his offense towards a crescendo at the end. Against Warhorse, again, it was Warhorse that kind of came out hot. Cody had a bit in the middle, and then picked his spot at the end. Eddie Kingston came out hot. Cody kind of matched it against Eddie Kingston. Kingston kind of took control in the middle, and it was very much, again, Cody picked his spot towards the end. So maybe it's a case of the spot that he was waiting to pick just did not come. I don't know. Starks is the only one where Cody was kind of stronger at the beginning. Starks took control in the middle, and then Cody, again, it's picked his spot. There's no kind of, he didn't really overwhelm Starks. It just happens towards the end. Mark Quinn took it to Cody. Cody matched him. Big spike from Cody in the middle. Mark Quinn throwing offense around like crazy towards the end, and Cody picked his spot. Jungle Boy, Cody came out hot against Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy built his way into the match, kind of taking control after that head bump on the outside. Cody overwhelmed Jungle Boy towards the end. So out of the ones that I've got in front of me just now, Cody has been picking his spot and matching his opponents. Whereas here it looks like he didn't feel that he could against Brodie Lee, or he wasn't prepared against Brodie Lee, or he panicked. Nonetheless, Brodie Lee didn't give Cody a chance to hang around. He didn't give him a chance to pick his spot, and he took those 12 shots, literally shoved Cody off of him and just took the match by the scruff of the neck.
Yeah, there's something to say as well that Brodie Lee is someone that when we looked at offense taken for wrestlers, Brodie Lee is someone that could also sort of absorb that punishment. Those super heavyweights tend to absorb punishment. And by that, I mean 12 strikes, I guess. And next week we will be taking a deep dive into Cody's TNT title run, all of those 9 matches, to sort of see what we can pick out in terms of, those analytics and whatnot. Because there were some interesting ideas that we sort of teased, not really teased, but talked about before we started recording last week. That were like, oh, okay, there's some ideas brewing about of how this whole title run was. And I think, 9 matches, I think it's a good idea to sort of break it down, look at it, and see how it did. I think all in all, I think this was a great title run from Cody. It really helped establish the prestige of this title with 9 great matches, I would argue.
It's been superb, like the most consistent thing in wrestling, I'd suggest.
Yeah, and I would also say that like it really helped. I mean, this TNT title has sort of really helped be a constant, solid thing during this COVID era of wrestling, especially for AEW. When they were filming in Georgia for that number of weeks, we had that tournament, and then we had Double or Nothing, and then we had this 9 out of 11 week run of title matches from Cody. So it was always something that we can look forward to, and it really was helpful. Will Brodie Lee continue that? I doubt it. But I guess let's get into the news before we talk about the rest of Brodie Lee's
Sorry,
run.
just very quickly on what you were saying there about kind of what the title's done. So there was a really interesting tweet from Michael Sidwich about I'm going to start that again. So there's really
Take three.
So there's a really interesting tweet from Michael Sidwick on Twitter about this, and he was talking about how AEW created this new title in the middle of the quarantine era in an empty building with no fans, and how they put it on Cody, who was kind of criticized for putting the title on himself by some. And they've taken it week by week and built up the prestige of this title, still not really with any fans. He commented on the look of it, looking like a tin can, which, it's harsh, but it's for effect. And how Cody losing this title was a huge moment. It kind of made Brodie Lee credible, and just really how they've done such a good job with this title with such difficulty at the same time. For personally, if you compare the prestige of this title against something like the Universal title in WWE and the kind of resources and the times at which they were trying to establish these titles, it's kind of night and day, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that the best way to establish a title is just have a lot of great, solid defenses. Who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk that just solid wrestling?
It's not like there's a WWE network with a history of all these wrestling promotions around the world that have done that at any point.
Yeah, but if that existed, that would cost hundreds of dollars, wouldn't it? Surely. Like, what if I wanted to watch a bunch of Stampede matches? How would I be able to do that?
Tapes. You need to get those tapes.
I gotta get that tape library. Let's start shipping tapes to each other. But I'm very excited. I thought, this title run was great. We'll go into the deep dive even more next week, sort of give an overview of Cody's TNT title reign. We'll do all that next week. But more before we talk about, Mr. Brodie Lee's potential title run and where that could be going, a little bit of I guess, exclusive news from this broadcast is that from a source saying that Cody, this is sort of a write-off for Cody because Cody will be working on a side project. He'll be entering a bubble on that side project. So because of the nature, kind of like, like the NBA basketball bubbles where they kind of have to be stuck inside the bubble. Cody will have to be stuck inside that bubble, which means that he will not return to Dynamite until at the very least, what was it, the 23rd of September, whatever that Wednesday was. Gotta look it up again. Yeah, 23rd of September at the very least. Assuming that AEW's taping schedule remains the same of being bi-weekly. Bi-weekly? Every other week. Is bi-weekly and every other week the same thing?
I think so, yeah.
I think as well. So what that means is that this is sort of a write-off. This means that Cody won't be back till the 23rd. It also means he will be gone from All Out, assuming all of those things stay in place. So with that knowledge, Craig, where do you think Mr. Brodie Lee is going with his? Are we getting weekly title defenses? Are we, and more importantly, who will he be defending that championship against at All Out?
Yeah, it's an interesting one in that scenario, with Cody having been kind of the consistent wrestling presence on Dynamite over the past few weeks, the TNT title defenses being such a consistent source of quality wrestling. It's going to be interesting to see how Dynamite manage without him. In terms of somebody stepping up to take on Brodie Lee, whether or not he does the same thing as Cody, a lot of people are saying that he won't, but I could see him wanting to diminish Cody's reign and being like, yeah, I'll take on blah, 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 and blah. But you might then see Dark Order interference or whatever. In terms of the pay-per-view, I'm really struggling to come up with a name, somebody that, like a babyface competitor that makes sense. Maybe it'd be Dustin with a Cody link, but not sure.
Can I hit you with a name? Get ready to turn up that radio, because looking down the ring is Matt Cardona defending his friend Cody and taking on Brodie Lee. That's not part of my news. That's just my theory.
That's what they're going to do.
It makes sense because, remember, Matt Cardona debuted in a tag match with Cody against Reynolds and Silver.
Yeah. I prefer my idea. I prefer Dustin, but
that's fair.
I think your idea will be more likely.
I like the Dustin a little bit more. I think the problem with the Dustin is that Dustin was also attacked in that closing angle. So there's an argument to be made that, like, I wonder if they're taking away, if they're going to take away Cody for however many weeks, I wonder if they're going to be taking away the rest of the Nightmare family, taking away QT, Dustin, and Brandy off the next several weeks. I never thought about that, but that could be part of it. I mean, they're not involved in what Cody's doing, but I wonder if they're going to have to be involved because of the angle.
I would guess that they'll stick around to remind you of what happened. I think you'll see the Natural Nightmares taking on the Dark Order. You might even see something between Brandy and Anna Jay.
That's true.
Yeah,
but
that would be interesting, actually.
I think Matt Cardona is the most, to me, the most obvious pick. We have two Dynamites before this All Out, so I sort of seeing, because then you could have maybe Matt Cardona win, and then Cody comes back to challenge for the title or something, and then we have that match. Matt only has 5 appearances. He's potentially used 1 or 2 of them, depending how they count appearances or when that contract was signed, or that agreement, I should say. Less of a contract, more of an agreement.
So they've kind of been building up 3, 4, and 5 as a trio. Silvers, Reynolds, and Angels. So I do wonder if it's a case of them taking on the Natural Nightmares who need a partner. Enter Matt Cardona. That's
not a bad idea either, because then you have Matt Cardona appear, and then he can challenge Brodie to make up for his friend. I think we're on the right track here. I think we are on the right track of how to book this whole angle. I know it's not something you wanted, but I think this is what's probably going to happen. I would put money down on that. I put money down on that.
Yeah, no, I would be surprised if Matt Cardona doesn't take on Brodie Lee at All Out now.
Yeah. Well, speaking of pay-per-views, we had a NXT Takeover, the 30th anniversary. Not anniversary. I'm not Natalia. I don't want to get confused. The 30th special coming out of NXT Takeover XXX. So we had 6 matches on this card. Thoughts on the overall card, top down, Craig, about this brand new pay-per-view coming out of NXT?
So
what a sad response.
I mean, it was fine.
Yeah.
Like it was all right. It was decent. There was some good stuff in there. But like, gone are the days where the show opens with a tag team ripper, has at least one other, really top work rate quality match, and then almost like a guaranteed main event, quality assured match. It's not NXT anymore.
Why do you think that is? Do you think, or maybe a better question is, what was the point where NXT no longer became NXT of old? Was it when they arrived on USA Network? Was it when COVID started and crowds were gone, like WWE says it was? Where's the point, do you think?
I'm not convinced it was just that. I think it was going that way before then.
Before COVID or before USA Network?
Before USA Network.
Oh, really?
The first time I can remember watching Takeover and being a bit kind of miffed by the main event was the 3 Stages of Hell match at Takeover Toronto 2, the Johnny Gargano Adam Cole one, where they had that was it a steel cage or
yeah,
just a steel cage?
Or the Adam Cole Johnny Gargano match, was that the one?
Yeah.
Oh, that was a 2 out of 3 falls match, Toronto 2. I'll look it up. I'll double check, but continue.
So they had the original title match that Johnny Gargano won, and I believe that was Toronto 1, and then there was another one where Cole won and blah blah blah. But eventually, so I've got it on my screen now. What's the date though? I think it was in July last year. It was like in the summer before what do you call it? Before AEW happened, and like the card is fine. Street Profits versus Undisputed Era, I would guess that was good, but I can't remember. Shayna Baszler versus Mia Yim, I can remember that, it was bad. And then they've got a 3-way for the North American Championship. VD versus Roderick Strong and Pete Dunne. I think that was all right. I think I enjoyed that, but people were down on it. And then it was the Adam Cole, Johnny Gargano kind of really contrived match. The first fall was a wrestling match, and then it was a street fight, and then it was a steel cage match, something like that.
Barbed wire steel cage match.
Oh, really? Was it? Yeah.
Yes, they had barbed wire on the top.
Good. Yeah.
And that was the moment where they did coming from the top of the steel cage through a bunch of tables to retain the title.
Yeah, so that one wasn't good, and it began to feel like they'd become obsessed with having these epic matches, and they started trying to force it. And then NXT on USA happened, and it started off all right. There was that great. The first one had a great title match between a challenger whose name I'm not going to say either, and Adam Cole. It was very good. It's hard to talk about this without stumbling into these people. But yeah, it started off
such a sad world we live in that sense.
Yeah. But yeah, it felt like they lost their knack. Then they realized that people were turning on them, so they've started employing more and more main roster people or main roster tropes, and now it's this thing that like like it's not NXT anymore, and it's not as goofy and sillily engaging as the main roster can be. It's just this kind of, this not non-needed anymore thing.
The Toronto takeover was followed up, was what, August 10th, 2019, right before they went to USA Network. Followed up with War Games, where we had this is on USA Network.
Good.
The arrival of Finn Balor. Actually. Yeah, War Games is good. We had the arrival of Finn Balor, so we're talking about those main roster stars. That was a solid show. And then following that was Portland, which that was the sort of discussion on. I remember the discourse about Portland was that like every match was basically the same. There were like they're all like good.
Average.
They're all above average matches, but every match was the same. So by the time you got to the Cole Ciampa match,
which wasn't good,
everything sort of like all the melodrama sort of stacked on top of each other until you got there, and you're like, oh, okay, I don't care for this anymore. Or at the very least, that's what I felt as well.
I can just remember Portland being a slog. Like it was hard to get through.
And then that was February. So then, a couple weeks later, COVID started. Then we get In Your House. And now we're at XXX.
Yeah, and like In Your House was okay. But I think by that point, expectations were so low because of COVID and NXT. And like, I think I in particular was just kind of wanting something to be good. So I think there was a decent Finn Balor match in amongst that. And then I really liked the triple threat women's match. But yeah, it's sad. Like I'd be lying if I said that I don't enjoy saying silly things about NXT. But I'd rather it was still what it was before, Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, Nakamura, et al., all of those guys.
That's all fair. Well, let's get through this rundown. Of course, like I said, we have 6 matches, and then we have stats for a select number of these matches. But of course, we don't have them for all, so we're going to go through them at the very least. Starting off with the pre-show match that everyone almost definitely saw. It was Breezango defeating Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch and the team from... I can't pronounce this properly. Legado del Fantasma, I believe. Joaquin Wilde... Joaquin, there it is. Joaquin Wilde and Raul Mendoza, which did not realize until I was looking at this just now. Did you know that was a #1 contenders match for the NXT Tag Team Championships?
I think I did, yeah. But then I didn't actually watch it, so.
Well, I watched it. It was a fine match. I am a fan of Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch. I thought they did a great job.
They're very good.
They're very, very good. I thought they did a great job in this match. Breezango is fine. Wilder Mendoza did a fine job as well. It was a 6-minute match, 6 and 52-second match. So I'm sort of like, it wasn't much to really be there to begin with. And then now that I know it's a #1 contenders match, I'm so more of upset now about it, because now that means we get to see Imperium versus Breezango, which is not something I'm excited for. I would have been way more excited for Lorcan and Burch, but or even Wilde and Mendoza, but that's fine. We'll get Breezango against Imperium down the road. It was a fine match. I don't really have much more to say to that, Craig, than I just wish it was Burch and Lorcan. Yeah.
Don't know why it's not. Maybe they're looking for those main roster YouTube clicks.
I guess so. I don't, or maybe the Twitter shareability of interactions of Breezango and all of their various entrances mean more possibly maybe than a great match of Burch and Lorcan versus Imperium. But that's besides the point, I guess. Moving on to the first match on the main card, it was Finn Balor defeating Timothy Thatcher in 13 minutes and 32 seconds to open up the show. Craig, we do have 1 page of stats here to talk about thoughts on this match and thoughts of the stats.
So I didn't go into huge detail with this match. It was fine. I quite enjoy watching the kind of exchange of kind of struggling grapple submission type moves when it's kind of intricately done like it was here. Statistics tell the story of the match. Finn Balor doing a bit of submission to fend off Thatcher, but Thatcher with just a second under 3 minutes worth of submission in the whole match. 13 and a half minute match. 3 minutes of that was Thatcher trying to submit Balor, so that's a hefty chunk of the match. Balor differentiated his offense more, therefore more of the strikes, grapples, and dives, etc., were utilized by Finn Balor. You can also see the tactics from the pin attempts. 5 pin attempts from Balor, only 1 from Thatcher, who was trying to submit his opponent. This was an all right match. 40 reversals, which is quite a lot for a 13 and a half minute match. This is because of the kind of the hold reversal aspect, rather nature of the beginning of this. For kind of a bit of context, there were only 44 reversals in the 21-50 minute Cross and Lee match. So very intricate, very, very kind of side to side in terms of who was in charge.
Yeah, I think very obvious. I sort of noticed this trend when we were talking about the Fight Pit match with Riddle and Thatcher, is that when it comes to WWE, they, or at the very least NXT, what they do a lot with their wrestlers are that they define them a lot more into a certain genre of wrestling, whereas AEW has a lot more like all around guys, or the matches are more all around. There is, when you have Thatcher and they're like, yeah, he's the mat specialist, submission guy. That's what he's going to be doing. 179 seconds of submissions, reversals, not a decent amount of strikes as well, but compared to Balor, who is more of a striker, then he's going to get more strikes in. He's going to have more strike downs. Thatcher is just going to go in there and try to wear you down submission wise. Balor is going to try to outstrike you, and that is what came down to what the stats showed me. And obviously when it came down to it, Balor got the win here, even though getting less match offense in general. He did get that more strike down rates and reversals as well, so he did get some submissioned with an ED a lot by Thatcher, but he was able to reverse a lot of those submission holds to eventually get the win here. I do think this match already is kind of weird, having Balor and Thatcher. I think it's a solid, like, on a match card, it looks nice, but like Balor, I guess, is a face now, and people are arguing that he can maybe be challenging Karrion Kross down the line. But even then, I think it's weird, because then you have Thatcher, who is someone else that they've been pushing. I don't know. It feels like the sort of thing of like they're pushing these two guys in a way, but then it's like, you have Thatcher lose fairly clean. So then it's like, okay, what is Thatcher doing? I don't know. I think you could have put Thatcher in the ladder match, and that could have been more interesting than having him in this match. But that's more of a personal gripe than anything else. I think it was still a fine match, a solid match between these two. Like you said, it's not a takeover of old where you get a high octane tag thriller. You get a sort of methodical grapple match between Thatcher and Balor here.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. Balor did a similar match with Gargano a while back. It was very intricate to begin with. I suppose it depends on taste, but I wouldn't want to see that every match in the card, or even 3 or 4 of them. It would lose the kind of intrigue. But it's certainly, I find it really interesting watching how they're using kind of like almost like proper wrestling to kind of try and be superior.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where Thatcher will go and continue to go.
I don't have an answer on that one. It is quite mystifying.
Is there any possibility that there could eventually, maybe not anytime soon, but eventually be some sort of team up with him and Imperium? Go back into those Ring Conf days.
Possibly. Depends where Walter actually is. I don't know. I think he's not in America, because actually he was featured in the NXT UK advert that I think was on during this show, or it was on one of the two. So yeah, it seems like he's going to be there. And if the other guys are currently in America, they're stuck where they are. So that would make sense. He could perhaps be the leader. That would be interesting. I wonder if he will be tangling with Damian Priest at some point. But yeah, who knows? I've not been paying as close attention as I once did to NXT, so it's hard to kind of read the lay of the land there.
I like that idea that the winner of this match goes on to potentially challenge for the NXT championship, while the loser of this match goes on to potentially challenge for the North American championship.
Yeah, but that's just how they do it, isn't it? It doesn't matter if you lose; you can just get it anyway.
That's a point, and that's sort of an overall gripe, I guess, we have of NXT at the moment. Moving down the card, of course, we have the ladder match for the vacant NXT North American Championship. In 21 minutes and 24 seconds, it was Damian Priest that ended up climbing that ladder and defeating Bronson Reed, Cameron Grimes, Johnny Gargano, and others. Damian Priest gets the win here. We also have the sort of a great graph that I love, the sort of flow of offense tide changes, because obviously it would be a nightmare, I imagine, to put together a sort of one sheet of this match. But talk us through this match, your thoughts on the match, but also talk us through this beautiful, colorful graph.
So the reason that I only did this slide, because this was the slide that I was most interested in seeing. I could have done the match stats slide, but one of the competitors in this match was named in the speaking out allegations, and like it's weird enough seeing these people wrestle, never mind putting their face on stuff yourself. So I've chosen not to do that. But I did still want to see how this graph looked out, so I've kind of made a compromise with myself and just done the graph and left the rest of it out. But yeah, it does a good job, I feel, of showing who was kind of in control of the match at certain points. As you can see, Bronson Reed features somewhat heavily. He has the biggest spike of offense in this match, and he's kind of there and abouts throughout. He did stand out to me. I thought he was great in the big spots. I loved that moment with him on the ladder with Candice LeRae on his back. That was really inventive. I liked that a lot. You can see Damian Priest is kind of sporadically involved in big chunks before he reappears at the end after being nowhere. Johnny Gargano also does feature quite consistently, and then especially at the end. And the man that doesn't really feature, there's only small bursts of green there for Cameron Grimes. He kind of popped up, made a silly noise, and kind of got hit. It was generally his kind of his role in the match. So yeah, it was an interesting match to analyze this way. It was interesting to notice how the competitors kind of cycled in and out of the match.
Yeah, and that's also a great point, is that sort of cycling out, it's a 5-man ladder match. You're cycling people in and out constantly. I do also like the fact that the people with the largest spikes did not win. I mean, I don't know how much of it there is something to say to that, but Damian Priest, the guy that eventually wins the match, has the fourth out of 5 people highest spike. So him, the reason I bring that up is that this is a ladder match. The match isn't about getting necessarily the most offense into your opponent. It's about wearing down your opponent enough so that they can be down for a couple seconds so that you can get the opportunity to climb a ladder and grab a title. So you don't have to, Bronson Reed is someone that I feel like he was constantly shining and constantly trying to put in a lot of effort, but ultimately there's an argument to me that was maybe not the best tactic for him. You want to be someone that can, like Damian Priest, put in a decent amount of effort to wear down his opponents, but then able to also take the punishment and climb that ladder and grab the title. Whereas like Cameron Grimes was just sort of a non-factor, you could argue, in this match as well, based on this sort of flow of offense here. What are your thoughts on Damian Priest getting his first title in the NXT division?
Wasn't expected. Didn't think it would be him. I've not been a big fan of his, I have to admit. All that I can remember from him is he took a really horrible looking bump where he was kind of knocked off the apron of the ring onto some steel steps in a takeover a while ago. It might have even been in your house.
It was.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it might have gone with Cameron Grimes. He's been getting a lot of airtime recently. He would have made a kind of a really good cowardly heel, perhaps holding this belt. Johnny Gargano could have probably done the job, but it seems a bit pointless. I don't know. I don't gravitate towards Damian Priest. I'm not drawn in by him.
Yeah, for me, it was the reason I'm not really drawn into the Damian Priest character is that I just don't care about like a guy that is like this nightclub archer dude person. Like, I don't really care. I thought Punishment Martinez in Ring of Honor was a much more interesting character. You know, sort of that kind. I mean, I could see why they changed it maybe, but he kind of has that like personality where he's like the dark brooding figure, and then when it comes to like big matches he like ramps it up even more with a little bit of face paint, so I can see why they changed it, but when you come to NXT, Balor's already different, so who cares. So I was like, Damian Priest here is just somebody that like, I think he's like a solid performer. I just think that he's sort of hampered by a weird character motif thing.
He's quite old as well. Is he not like 40?
He looks old. At the very least, he looks old. Let me look it up real quick. Damian Priest is 38. So
okay, yeah. So it's hardly developmental.
Hardly developmental. He's been wrestling for quite a while, and I don't imagine that. I would not be surprised. I mean, would you be surprised at all if Damian Priest gets at all called up to WWE main roster, or do you think he's just going to finish out his career in NXT? I mean, 38, that's twilight years are approaching, my dude.
Mm-hmm. I mean, probably they took up Bobby Roode. He was like, I think he was at 41 when he went up. So yeah, he could easily do it, or he could easily stay in NXT. I don't think they put too much thought into these things. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out. For people I thought was going to win, my money was going to be on Bronson Reed or something. But I can see why they went with Priest, since Priest has been sort of gunning for that title for quite a while. And, sort of the new, older one compared to like Bronson Reed at the very least, and Cameron Grimes. Because the Reed and Grimes, I believe, were both involved with that NXT breakout star tournament thing. So they're still fairly new. So they got some time before they get to any sort of titles. And then obviously, Gargano also could have worked, but it's also like, who cares? And then the others, I don't want to talk about it. I don't even want to talk about the others, because who cares if they've been in car accidents, because we all know that's not the whole reason, but that's fine. You can lie to everybody, Triple H. Anyways, moving on, because I don't want to talk about that guy anymore. And moving on to the next match, which was Adam Cole defeating Pat McAfee. That's right, that Pat McAfee, in a singles match in 16 minutes and 12 seconds. This was Pat McAfee's NXT debut against Adam Cole. So what did you think of Pat's, not only his debut match, but how he did, and do you expect to see him more in NXT moving forward?
So it's really interesting the way they did this. They kind of started off with kind of a bit of a showdown between the two of them. They were doing headlocks. Pat McAfee was doing a headlock. It was interesting. There was the moment that everyone will see, like they used his athleticism. There's the moment that people will remember where he was pushed off the top rope and he kind of somersaulted out of it, landed on his feet, and then did the vertical jump up onto the turnbuckle, which was very impressive. They built him up at the beginning, kind of around the 3 to 6, 7 minute mark. He was in total control. He got the biggest offense spike of this entire match at that point. Then there was some more kind of trading of stuff before Adam Cole kind of took control at the end of the match. They did the punt, although the commentary were very careful to say that it hit Cole in the chest. I don't know what's next for Pat McAfee, if he's going to turn up again. So, for example, when I was doing the statistics for this match, I've included that punt as Pat McAfee's finisher. I mean, it wasn't a Randy Orton punt to the head. Maybe if he was to wrestle again, he might, say, win a match by punting in a different manner. But, you know, it's hard to judge at this point. But yeah, it was an all right match. Pat McAfee with the most offense in the first 5. Adam Cole with the most offense in the second 5. In the third 5 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes of this match, they got pretty much the exact same offense. And then Cole finished them off a few minutes, 1 minute and 8 seconds over the 15-minute mark. So yeah, it was an all right match. It was interesting because of who was in the ring. Pat McAfee was good, very good for a non-wrestler. Yeah, I'd watch him wrestle again.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this, the stats here, it's sort of just, you know, an all around. There's no big takeaway for me here. I mean, we had submissions, we had strikes, we had strike down. It was just sort of, there's nothing really that I had as a big takeaway in terms of the stats. In terms of Pat's, I should say, debut, you know, for first time, or I guess technically, according to his cage match, second time wrestler, he technically has a match in 2009 against a guy named Warpig. For some indie promotion, but you know, for his second time match, first time in NXT, I thought he did a very good job. You know, celebrity matches are always something, and I think he brought it as much to the table. He's a guy that understands wrestling to an extent, so he brought it, and you know, he did a good job of you know, supplying his end of the match. You know, it was, you know, a lot of headlocks. It was like simple body drops, you know, it was just a drop kick in there, which is sort of cool. And then the big moment of the superplex spot, and I guess also the Swanton bomb. But, you know, it wasn't like, in terms of a match, it wasn't like the best match on the card, I would say. But it was definitely, you know, especially, I wouldn't say it was Adam Cole's best match that he's ever had. But it was, you know, you're setting the bar lower for someone that's making their debut, let alone the fact that they're a celebrity. I could easily see him return. He's definitely got the mic skills. If he just wants to return as sort of like a managerial type as well, that would also be great, because he obviously has the mic skills. There was a Voice of Wrestling made a point that, like, you know, between this weekend of Pat McAfee and Dominic Mysterio, how do you feel about these sort of performance center trainees coming in and having fairly decent, fairly liked matches compared to a lot of performance center people being like, yeah, they're fine. I mean, it's not really, they're fine people. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think sometimes it doesn't need to be all clean cut and perfectly executed to be entertaining. I haven't watched the Dominic match as of yet. Were they also making the point about microphone skills as well, though?
Who, Voices of
Wrestling?
Yes, they also talked about, because they put him over quite well for his, and I also agree, is that his mic skills were great, because what was great about his promo they cut, I believe on the Go Home show of NXT, was that it was natural. Like it felt like he wasn't scripted at all. Maybe some points, but he knew how to talk, knew what to say. He was using actual terms and like wrestling and whatnot. It felt real. Whereas like Adam Cole responds being like, Pat McAfee, this Sunday at NXT Takeover XXX 30, I'm going to kick your teeth down your throat, or I don't know. You know, it felt real, and I think that's really the draw for Pat, is that he can cut a promo. He can easily cut a promo.
But like, I think the thing is, most people can. Like we all, like, it's not an amazing skill to be able to say stuff that will entertain people. We do it all day, every day. Like, we have conversations with people and we laugh and we.
Or at the very least, I hope we do. As we are currently talking, vying to entertain people.
Yeah, but like it's not like, you know, not everyone can be a actor, and not everybody has that much control over their voice and their face and their body language and whatever. But like, you have conversations with your friends and you make each other laugh, or you can putting together a promo to sanitize and pull the life and fun out of promos like WWE does is like a feat of dehumanization that is quite something else, to make everybody sound like a robot, so much so that just like two blokes coming in and not being able to sound like a robot quickly enough because they've just got there, it's quite something. John Moxley's cutting promos in AEW. Some people are saying they're disorganized. Some people are saying that they're excellent. And he does all the things that you say. He tells you who his opponent is. He tells you how good they are. He tells them how good he is, and he sells the pay-per-view. But he does it all by sounding like just some charismatic human rather than whatever Seth Rollins is being trained to do.
And that's just the overall thing, is that maybe there's also an argument that Pat's promo sounds so great because the bar around him has been so lowered that anything different is great to watch. I mean, there's also something to say about that in general about his debut match, is that anything different is great to watch. New is really appealing to a lot of people, and especially something that is new but also refreshing, like his promo skill there. It really draws in a lot of folks. I thought this was a good match. Like I said, I thought it was a very solid match. Pat sort of holding his own in this match against Adam Cole. Adam Cole eventually getting the win. I give props to Pat. If he comes back in the future, I wouldn't mind seeing that. Whether or not he will, I guess time will tell. But I think Pat would be, for me, a welcome to the Performance Center.
Yeah. I would have no issue with that at all.
Okay, let's keep the ball rolling here. Let's move forward into the NXT Women's Championship match, where it was Io Shirai defeating and retaining her title against Dakota Kai in 17 minutes and 13 seconds. Craig, what are you sort of on that rundown of the stats? What are you thinking about this match so far?
So yeah, this for me is the best match, the most interesting match. I've been going on an Io Shirai dive recently. I've been checking out her stuff on Stardom, particularly the Max series against Mayu Iwatani, which is something that people should do if they have not already. It kind of shows Io Shirai at a time that she's possibly one of, if not the better wrestlers in the world. But yeah, this is a really good match. What's interesting about it is the metrics that we're talking here, 50-50 in terms of match offense. That wasn't rounding either. That was exact. More strikes and grapples and dives in particular from Shirai, with Dakota Kai really focusing on submissions. And something that was really interesting about the way that Dakota Kai was wrestling here, wrestling very, very well, I might add. I was slightly doubtful whether or not she'd be up to the kind of role of main event female wrestler in NXT. But I thought she was really, really quite excellent. But what she was doing that was really, really interesting is every time she pinned Io Shirai, and Io Shirai would kick out, Dakota Kai would then reverse that into a submission move. So the arm would go up or the leg would come up, and Io Shirai would immediately turn that into a submission move. And she did that. How many times did she do that? She did that how many times have I got? 4 times in the match she did that, which was really quite good attention to detail, and a wrestling skill that she's portraying her character to have that isn't as common. It's the kind of thing that you could imagine Daniel Bryan or Zack Sabre Jr. doing.
Or even someone like a Thatcher, on the rare case it does go for a pin attempt. Or there actually was a moment in the Asuka Banks match at SummerSlam where Asuka, not necessarily a pin attempt, but it was really cool, where Asuka had Banks up into the electric chair position, threw her down into a face buster, and as she threw her down, captured the leg and threw a knee bar on top of it. Anytime those sort of moves and instances happen where going for a pin attempt or going for a move and immediately transitioning into another move, I think is a great point. It shows the skill level, the intelligence as well of those wrestlers. To be like, okay, I didn't get you with the pin. Well, let's immediately go into a submission hold to continuously wear you down, because the point of the match is, again, is to wear you down. I mean, and Dakota Kai definitely went for it. 130 seconds of submission time versus Shirai's 21. I mean, looking at this, I mean, the same sort of thing. Shirai is the striker, 45 strikes versus Dakota Kai's 30. 12 strike downs, almost double of Dakota Kai's. I think Dakota Kai brought it. I think she went for it. I think she had a very good time probably doing it. She did she dominate the match according to the stats? No, she did not really dominate the match, but I think that she at the very least held her own. And I think, she didn't win this one, but I can potentially see her maybe winning it again down the line. We'll see. I think this was the match that I think she really needed to have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And it was an Io Shirai masterclass. She got most of the offense in 2 out of the 3 full 5-minute periods. There's more substantial chunks of red in the flow of offense graph. Yeah, but like it's Io Shirai. She's supposed to be that good. She's supposed to be presented as such. And it's just like, what happens next? Is it Mercedes Martinez? Is it Rhea Ripley? There was a good shot at the end of that match of Io Shirai celebrating, and Rhea Ripley was still lurking in the background after dealing with Raquel Gonzalez. So couple ways they could go with this. And the only other one that kind of pops into mind is Candice LeRae. She's maybe got less to do at the moment and might be more suiting to step up to that match.
Yeah, we have, it's classic WWE. Who do we have as heel? So it appears that we potentially could have the heel Rhea Ripley going after the title. There's always Candice LeRae, I think would be a great point. Going back into that, we mentioned, I believe, like we mentioned Toronto previously, that great Io Shirai Candice LeRae match between the two of them. I think there are options there. I would love to see Candice LeRae. I would love to see Rhea Ripley. I wouldn't be surprised if we potentially get like a Tegan Nox, Dakota Kai, Shirai triple threat, just to throw Nox in there as well. I feel like that feud is over, but I don't remember a definitive ending to that feud. So yeah, I could potentially see that happen as well, since Nox faced Shirai and lost because of Kai, I want to say. Don't quite remember.
I can't remember how that ended.
But I think, like I said, this is a solid match. I think it was the match Dakota Kai needed, not only as a character, but also just hold her own in this division. It's a division this good, as everyone keeps mentioning. I would argue a division this good, if you get the tap on the shoulder and you don't deliver, then you will easily fall behind. And I think Dakota Kai took that tap on the shoulder, went for it, and I think she's holding her place in the division. So good on Kai. Well, let's keep it going. We got the main event, Karrion Kross with Scarlett versus Keith Lee, where Karrion Kross wins the NXT Championship in 21 minutes and 51 seconds. Or 21 minutes, 50 seconds, I should say. Sorry. Karrion Kross been on a apocalyptic warpath towards the NXT Championship. Gets it here. Thoughts on this match, Craig?
Well, I mean, statistically, the statistics are really interesting. I'd almost go as far as to suggest the statistics are more interesting than the match actually was itself. So, for example, both men 58 strikes each. That's pretty cool. Same amount of strikes. Karrion Kross with one of the largest kind of accumulations of submission seconds you're going to see, with 269 seconds worth of submission. That's a lot. But this was only a 22-minute match. So throughout this match, Karrion Kross had a 49-second submission hold, a 73, a 52, and a 59. There was long stretches of this match where Karrion Kross had Keith Lee in submission holds, and it wasn't Zack Sabre Jr. twisting and pulling and reversing and taking ever more limbs. It was kind of bog standard WWE style moves. So it wasn't the best match. I wasn't as down on it as a lot of other people were, but I think that's because kind of when you're working with those kind of numbers and you're kind of noticing how they're stacking up, that is kind of interesting in itself. Interesting that Keith Lee's going to Raw. I thought he might be going to SmackDown. But yeah, this match was fine. It's a shame that Karrion Kross has injured himself in doing it, but like, if that then leads to there having to be an NXT tournament for the title, and it's not him in the main event spot, I don't know. I think I'm okay with that, if without being too mean.
Yeah, according to Karrion Kross himself, he says that he thinks he will be okay, but he's no doctor, so I guess the doctors will be the one to clear him. Because I don't know if you saw a picture of that zoomed in shoulder. It looks bad.
I could see whilst watching it. There was like an unnatural gap, was there not?
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad looking. Yeah, the stats of this look very interesting. I mean, to me, not only does the number of submission seconds really stand out, and not only the length of the match itself. I mean, this is the longest match that Karrion Kross has ever had at this point. I mean, before this, his longest was 6 minutes against Ciampa in your house. So this was an insanely long thing. If anything, that to me, that tells like the immense amount of punishment that Keith Lee can take. And speaking about immense amount of punishment, the third thing that really strikes to me is the match offense. Just being Karrion Kross had 2/3 of the total match offense in this match. It's 67% versus Keith Lee. To me, that's the story right there. Is that the reason this match took so long is that Keith Lee just would take everything. He would just constantly being punished and pummeled by Karrion Kross. And it wasn't until it was just, he just couldn't do it anymore that Keith Lee was put down for the count, if you will.
I suppose the best image to display this match is the last of the four. This was kind of just chucked in as a little extra one at the end, a little visual version of the first one, but it really shows off what happened in this match. First off, you see that the pie chart, the kind of 117 kind of offenses from Karrion Kross, the 63 from Keith Lee. If you're wondering about how the maths quite works there, and with submission, when I first started putting these stats together, I counted every second of submission as like a point. And then it just became, if any wrestler did like more submission, they got like the most match offense. It didn't really make sense. So I balanced it out with like every 5 seconds of submission is like the same as one strike. And that does seem to balance it out really well. And to the extent that like that doesn't really ever seem like it's wrong until like this match, maybe like one or two others. So this completely, the offense of Karrion Kross, this chart, the finishers, taunts, fouls, bar chart, that's usually like the x-axis there is usually like 100, 120 sometimes, because that's like a normal amount of submissions to be in a match. Here it's stretching to 300, which makes the 58 strikes that these two handed out look like a footnote in this match. Never mind the grapples or anything else. This was a match of lots of strikes would happen. Maybe one or two things happened. Karrion Kross grinds him down. Same thing. Karrion Kross grinds him down. It probably wasn't the most entertaining version of that kind of match if you didn't have something to amuse yourself, like writing down all the statistics.
One thought about the submission seconds graph. Maybe there's an idea to doing it like every submission seconds for every 10 seconds. So instead of like 269, it would be like 26. So it'd be easier to.
Yeah. The five does seem to balance it really well. Like,
Oh,
if you
not.
look,
I don't mean the points. I mean like putting it on the graph to make it not a blown out stat.
oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Again, I would suggest that, like, if you do look through the other graphs, it is usually the submissions that's pushing it, and I suppose it does even with that Dakota Kai one. But like, it doesn't generally push the graph too much. Like, if you look at the Adam Cole Pat McAfee one, it's fairly balanced.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe for that graph it should be changed a little bit. I think with the exception of this match, it doesn't really spoil the graph too much. And I think it's fair enough that it spoils the graph for this match, because there was 269 seconds of submission, which is an enormous amount.
Yeah. I mean, fucking the guy that is known for mat wrestling, Timothy Thatcher, was 179. This is almost 90 more seconds of submissions. Just and not only that, but I think at the very least, it also just utterly shows the amount of punishment that he was doing to Keith Lee. Whether or not the match was exciting, that's what the stats show, is that that's what it do. I think there's also, like, whether the match was exciting. I feel like that's also like a thing about how, like, there in some wrestling matches, especially like American wrestling, the idea of submission holds is sort of like a lost art, and that Americans don't really care too much about like submission and grappling and too much.
Possibly, but like, I would imagine somebody showed you the two matches that we've spoken about side by side. You'd end up watching the Thatcher Balor one, because the way they're doing submissions in the Karrion Kross match is not that interesting, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I also would imagine that Karrion Kross should have been like more of a striker in this match, more of just like, you know, I don't necessarily want to say like a Suzuki type striker, but just like a power guy that is just going to be throwing Keith Lee around.
Lance Archer-ish, perhaps.
Lance Archer-ish, I think, would be a great angle to that. Or even like a Brodie Lee type, someone that's just going to be throwing people around. I was never expecting submission machine Karrion Kross. We sort of talked about who we think the next challenger will be for Karrion Kross. I think Finn Balor's a possibility. I think there's actually an argument made that I guess now that Adam Cole is a babyface, he could maybe challenge Karrion Kross for the NXT Championship.
Yeah, that's possible. I hadn't thought of that one. Yeah.
I feel like everyone's thinking about Balor and everyone's like moving on from Adam Cole. The thing about the Adam Cole situation is that in a previous incarnation of NXT, this would be like Adam Cole wins this Pat McAfee match and then he gets called up to WWE on Monday Night Raw or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's interesting that Keith Lee's just gone up, because it almost suggests that Adam Cole going up would be too much. But then what would they even do with Adam Cole on the main roster? You know, he's small. That story's been beaten to death. But he is, you know, he's look at Ricochet. It's Adam Cole more talented than Ricochet? Probably not. They're quite similar. Just the talent looks different. So yeah, I don't know. It's an odd one.
Well, obviously you have the tag team of the Shorties, Shorty G and Shorty C, going up to SmackDown to team together. Yeah. I mean that's like the thing at the end of the day, is that like there's a size thing there. Keith Lee has obviously been red hot and main roster of 2019. He had a great 2019 run. And yeah, I'm excited to see more Keith Lee. I'm excited to see how he does on the main roster. He's definitely got the size advantage to his advantage, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I also, Keith Lee, I think, arrived to the main roster later than Cole. So Cole is sort of getting to that groove of Gargano and Ciampa, sort of have been there for a long time. So, you know, sort of remember Adam Cole debuted by attacking Drew McIntyre. That's how long ago that was. So we'll see. Maybe Adam Cole could go up to SmackDown. Maybe that's something.
Yeah, that's feeling a little bloated all of a sudden though. Now that Roman Reigns is back, but yeah,
Also,
I
a
don't
good
know.
point.
It's just weird. Like, what does it matter? Because they're not going to use him well, and it's this is the eternal problem with NXT. And I mean, they're not even using them well on NXT anymore.
My thing for NXT has always been that I would argue that the issue with NXT for me has been that people graduated high school, yet they aren't going off to college. They're just constantly hanging around high school, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
The point of the developmental brand was that they would build people up, get you all hyped and excited, and then they'll go over to the main roster, and then we'll see more of them on Mondays or Fridays. Now it's like people are just staying there, and they're trying to establish. And I think that's also the cons of establishing NXT, not as developmental territory, but establishing it as a third brand, is that this entire time they've been building up Gargano and Cole and Ciampa, that now that they aren't leaving, it's sort of like, okay, we've reached the pinnacle of them really quickly. Now what do we do with them? And it's just like, I don't know. Like, let's make Gargano a heel with his wife. Let's make Ciampa, I guess, just disappeared now they think about it. And Cole is a babyface now, with, I guess, the rest of the Undisputed Era. It's a little weird. Can we quickly talk about Keith Lee's title run real quickly?
Mm-hmm.
So Keith Lee, North American champion, becomes the first ever double champion in NXT history by having both. The following week, he gives up. He vacates his own North American championship to defend this title. Has one title defense against Karrion Kross and loses. I think having a 43-day reign technically is what it was. Let me look it up real quick. It was a 44-day reign from Keith Lee. So sort of, to me, very upsetting. I really did not enjoy this. I was hoping Keith Lee would get more. I think Keith Lee deserved more. I say that even though he was the first ever double champion in NXT history, but it's just sort of like, we got there, we relinquished the title, he loses it after his first defense, and then he gets called up. It was just sort of like, okay, here's his moment, and then we have to take everything away from him. And maybe they knew that he was getting called up. Maybe that's part of it. So who knows?
I suppose this is the issue with like babyface kind of stories. It's not dissimilar to Johnny Gargano's run in NXT when he hit that big long path to getting the championship and then losing it to Cole fairly quickly. Kofi Kingston, he didn't hold that for very long. Daniel Bryan wasn't going to hold on to the title after he won it at WrestleMania 30. You could almost even point towards Naito in Japan. Like they have these huge stories to get these titles, but then like I think a babyface run is hard, and they're doing it really well in AEW, but I think the rest of wrestling is struggling to make babyface champions likable and interesting in kind of modern day kind of fandom. It's kind of, I don't know, I think people are just finding it hard.
Yeah, and WWE has always had that problem where long babyface title runs have always been sort of an issue for them. Especially because like the whole thing is like, oh, we're building up Becky Lynch, we're building up Kofi Kingston, we're building up Daniel Bryan, or the fans are building up Daniel Bryan. We're building up Keith Lee and all this stuff, and then when they achieve their goal, it's like it's sort of just like, well, they've achieved the goal. Okay, that's it. Like, what do we do now? And they did a decent job with Becky Lynch holding that title for over a year, holding the Raw Women's Championship. But Becky Lynch, of course, was able to have the charisma and everything to really drive that moving forward as well. So, it's sort of all these sort of factors. And I also agree with the Naito issue. It's the journey is more important than the destination, I guess. Because for me, it's like the destination is the beginning of winning the title. And then it's like, okay, now we have the journey. I think that's maybe the point of like title reigns. It's like when going to a title is all about the destination, all about getting that title. But then once you have the title, it's about the journey. It's about how good your reign is, as we'll talk about with Cody next week. It's that sort of idea of like, how do we figure out the journey after the destination? I don't know.
Yeah. And it's strange they seem to not be able to have interesting kind of fighting champions that want to defend their title. And I think it's a problem with the promos. That's a big part of the babyface champion. If you can't write promos that people like, then your babyface champion had his legs cut from under him already. So like, what's Kofi Kingston supposed to do? What was Keith Lee going to do? There was a limit to how interesting he could be when somebody was scripting his likability and character out of his mouth. I think it goes back to that as well. This is just another symptom of the kind of micromanagement and the stifling that WWE seems to pump into their wrestlers' veins.
Ironically, you're limiting the limitless one, Keith Lee here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well then, that is it for this week's episode here. Thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of Wrestling with Statistics. Thank you so much. If you like what we do here, of course, you can subscribe to this podcast feed or any podcast feed of your choice. Basically, wherever podcasts are, you can go find Wrestling with Statistics and subscribe on the Hit the Books network. So subscribe there. Not only that, you'll get our Hit the Books fantasy booking GM mode kind of show. We had a SummerSlam yesterday, our SummerSlam pay-per-view special yesterday, which was very exciting, which you can go check out. And of course, we'll have the upcoming Friday episode as well, along with new content out at some point in the future on the same channel, on the same feed. So go check that out. Speaking of channel, you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Hit the Books Podcast, where you can see video versions of this podcast. Why video versions of the podcast are sort of, I don't want to say important, but also very helpful, are that all the visuals that we use for this show can be found on the YouTube channel. And so you can listen to the show or watch all the graphs and whatnot while you're listening. But of course, you can't just find them only there. You can also go to prowrestlingmusings.com and go check out all the visuals there. Craig, what do you have to plug?
Please sign up for the Pro Wrestling Musings newsletter. You'll be able to find it pinned on my Twitter feed, Craig PW Musings, at Craig PW Musings. So it has highlights of the week from the website. But also I'm trying to add in a special feature each week. I'm having a go at kind of interviewing people in kind of written form. Last week, because of time constraints, I did myself, but I got Twitter questions and then just answered them. Probably some interesting insights into how stats are put together. This coming week, this Wednesday, I'm going to be publishing a written interview with Grapple Gareth. Gareth is the person that founded and owns the Grapple Ratings app, the app that you can put, that you can rate wrestling matches and also use to find recommendations of wrestling matches. I read what he had to say this morning, and it is very, very, very interesting. Yes, great newsletter. Go check that out when it drops. Subscribe to that newsletter. Subscribe would be the term, right? Mm-hmm. So go check that out. It was great. The interview that you did with the Twitter questions, I thought was really good. I'm excited to hear about Grapple. 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 It's just a combination of Grapple Gareth right there. I love Grapple. I love using Grapple all the time.
I use it all the time. You can, I guess, technically follow me on Grapple as well, but because I think that's a thing people do. I don't know.
You can.
But yeah, I greatly enjoyed Grapple, so I'm very interested to see how that interview goes. Yeah, so go check out at Craig PW Musings, or also PW Musings on Twitter. You can go check me out at Hit the Books Pod. Follow me there. I would give all my great takes and breaking news. So subscribe. Go to the Pro Wrestling Musings. Go to YouTube. Leave a review if you don't mind. If you like what we did here, you can also leave a review, 5 stars. We would greatly appreciate it. It's one of those things that iTunes loves, obviously, 5-star reviews, but also number of reviews are also greatly available, greatly helpful for us. It allows, the sort of algorithms and whatnot allows more people to see the show with more reviews and even more 5-star reviews and whatnot. So it takes like 1 minute out of your day, maybe not even that, maybe 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review. So we would greatly appreciate that. I think that is it. So thank you everybody for listening again this week's episode. We'll be back next week with an all brand new episode of Wrestling Statistics. But until then, for Craig, I have been Ryan. Until next week, we'll see you then. Goodbye.